Most people think working longer is the safe choice. Stay employed a few more years.
Delay retirement. Keep the paycheck coming. Keep contributing.
Let the investments grow.
Push Social Security later.
Give the numbers more time to heal. It sounds responsible,
Mature.
financially intelligent.
And sometimes it is.
But there is a version of this advice that is not just incomplete. It is dangerous. Because for a surprising number of people, working longer does not protect retirement. It quietly damages it. Not in the motivational, life is short sense.
In the real sense. In the structural sense.
In the kind of way that doesn't show up clearly until years have passed and a person realizes they traded away something that money was supposed to protect in the first place. Here is the myth that needs to die. If you're behind on retirement, the obvious solution is to just work longer.
No. Not always.
Sometimes working longer is not a strategy. It is a delay mechanism.
Sometimes it helps.
Sometimes it buys time. But sometimes it locks people deeper into a life whose costs, habits, taxes, stress, and psychological patterns are the very reason retirement became difficult to begin with. That is the part almost nobody says out loud. The standard retirement story is built on a simple equation. More years working means more income, more savings, fewer years drawing down the portfolio, a larger Social Security check, maybe Medicare kicks in, maybe the market cooperates.
Great. Clean. Rational.
But real life does not happen inside clean equations. Real life happens inside bodies that get tired. Jobs that get political. Spending that expands to match income. Marriages that shift under stress. Adult children who still need money.
Parents who age. Healthcare surprises. Burnout. Identity. Inertia.
And inertia is where a lot of people get trapped. Because once someone decides, I'll just work 5 more years, they often stop asking the harder question. What exactly are those 5 years doing to the rest of my life? That question matters more than most retirement advice will admit. Take someone in their early 60s.
Good income.
Not wildly rich, but comfortable enough. They had every intention of retiring at 65. Then the markets dipped.
Or inflation rose.
Or they looked at their portfolio and felt a private wave of embarrassment. So they made the sensible decision. Work until 68.
Maybe 70.
Build a little more cushion.
Again, that sounds smart.
But then something subtle happens. Because the paycheck is still coming, they don't downsize the house yet. Because they're still working, they don't confront the spending structure yet. Because retirement got postponed, they delay the emotional and logistical transition they should have been preparing for. Because the job remains in place, they keep financing the life that only the job can support. In other words, working longer can preserve the exact financial habits that retirement required them to change. That is not progress. That is suspended confrontation. A lot of people think their problem is not enough years of income. Sometimes the deeper problem is a lifestyle too expensive to survive the end of income. Working longer doesn't automatically solve that. It can actually make it worse by allowing the person to postpone redesigning their life until even later, when energy is lower, options are narrower, and change feels more humiliating. This is the first way working longer can hurt retirement. It can let a fragile financial structure survive longer instead of forcing it to become sustainable. And the fragility is often invisible because higher earnings create emotional anesthesia. When money is still coming in, problems blur.
Not disappear. Blur.
The oversized mortgage looks manageable. The subscriptions look harmless. The 2-car household still feels normal. The expensive travel feels earned. Helping grown kids still feels generous instead of destabilizing. The property taxes still feel annoying instead of threatening. The job smooths over everything. So the person mistakes currently affordable for retirement ready. Then the job finally ends, and the real shape of the life appears all at once. The monthly costs were never built for freedom.
They were built for maintenance. Built for constant replenishment.
Built for a working identity, not a retired one. This is why some people who work longer do not arrive at retirement safer. They arrive later with the same problem.
Only older. And often more tired.
There is another hidden cost. Working longer can trick people into overvaluing future income and undervaluing present health. This is where the advice becomes almost cruel. When people say, just work a few more years, they often talk as if those years are equal to the ones before them. As if 67 to 72 feels basically like 57 to 62, just with more wisdom. That is not how aging works.
For some people, yes. They stay sharp, strong, energized.
They genuinely enjoy the work.
No problem.
But for many others, the late 60s and early 70s are not interchangeable extension years. They are prime health years being spent under conditions they may no longer physically or emotionally tolerate well.
More fatigue, more stress, more stiffness, more medical appointments, less patience for nonsense,
less appetite for commuting, office politics, performance reviews, artificial urgency, and the constant low-grade pressure of professional life. And here is the hard reframe nobody likes hearing: if your extra working years begin degrading your health, then they may be reducing the very retirement you are trying to fund. Because retirement is not just a bank balance. Retirement is usable life.
Time with mobility, time with clarity,
Time with relationships intact. Time when travel is still enjoyable. Time when your world has not yet shrunk around medications, recovery, and caution. A larger portfolio at 71 is not automatically a win if you purchased it by burning through some of the best remaining years you had left to live with freedom. People understand this emotionally when someone gets sick right after retiring. Everyone says the same thing.
That's terrible.
He worked all those years and barely got to enjoy it. But then they turn around and give advice that treats extra working years as universally wise.
No.
They are not universally wise.
They are a trade.
And like every trade, the price matters. The next problem is even less obvious. Working longer can increase the psychological dependency that makes retirement harder to enter at all. A lot of people are not just attached to the income. They are attached to the role.
The schedule. The title. The status. The proof.
The place where their competence is witnessed.
The structure of the week.
The ready-made answer to the question, so what do you do? The longer they stay, the more the job hardens into identity. This matters because retirement is not only a financial transition. It is a narrative collapse. One version of the self ends. If someone has spent decades being the provider, the expert, the executive, the dependable one, the late career professional with momentum, then delaying retirement can sometimes deepen the fear of retirement itself. They keep thinking they are giving the money more time. Sometimes they are really giving themselves more time to avoid the emotional shock of no longer being needed in the same way. That kind of delay is expensive. Because the later someone waits to build a life outside the job, the more disorienting retirement can become when it finally happens.
They don't know how to fill time.
They don't know who they are without deadlines. They don't know how to spend a Tuesday morning without feeling guilty or vaguely erased. So even if the money is technically enough, they keep working because work has become the last strong structure in their life. That is not financial wisdom. That is psychological dependence wearing a sensible outfit. And once you see that, a lot of "I'm just going to work a little longer" starts sounding different.
Not strategic. Avoidant.
There's another trap that almost never gets mentioned. Working longer can actually distort spending upward.
This is brutally common.
A person remains in a high-income job into their late 60s. Because they're working so hard, they justify a few comforts.
Better vacations. Better restaurants.
A newer car because they deserve reliability. Nicer clothes because their role still demands presence. Maybe a second property fantasy grows because we've earned it. Maybe grandkids arrive and generosity expands. Maybe helping adult children becomes semi-permanent because the parent is still earning and can afford to. Now ask the uncomfortable question: if those years were supposed to improve retirement, why did the life keep getting more expensive? That's the dark joke inside high-income extension years. People often think they're catching up, but because the paycheck remains large, they continue funding a version of normal that keeps retirement far away. The extra years don't always build margin. Sometimes they simply underwrite drift. And drift is one of the most destructive forces in retirement planning because it never feels reckless in real time. It just feels deserved. That's what makes this myth so sticky. Work longer sounds like discipline. In many households, it quietly becomes permission.
Permission to not change.
Permission to not simplify. Permission to not face the real number.
Permission to keep the house.
Permission to avoid hard conversations with a spouse. Permission to delay the emotional reality that retirement requires a different shape of life, not just a bigger account. Then there is tax drag. This is where the myth breaker gets even sharper. More years earning can mean more taxable income at the wrong time. More exposure to higher brackets. More years delaying strategic Roth conversions. More years before reducing income in a way that could have opened tax planning opportunities. More required minimum distributions looming later from swollen pre-tax accounts. More Medicare premium complications for higher earners in some cases.
More complexity. More friction.
Now, yes, this depends heavily on the person. It is not universal. But the point is that more work equals more financial benefit is not automatically true in clean, net terms. Sometimes the extra earnings are not building elegant wealth. They are just running through a system with a lot of leakage. And this is before we get to employment risk itself. People talk about working longer as if it's a guaranteed option.
It isn't.
Late career work is often more fragile than people admit. Age discrimination may be illegal, but professional expiration often arrives disguised as restructuring, changing culture, cost optimization, or the suspiciously sudden preference for new energy. A person may plan to work until 70 and get pushed out at 66. Or their health changes at 64. Or their spouse's health changes and caregiving blows up the plan. Or the company merges. Or the role disappears. Or technology strips away part of what once made them valuable. That's another reason the myth is dangerous. It treats working longer as a controllable lever.
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is wishful thinking. A retirement strategy built around uninterrupted late career employment is not always prudent. It can be a highly concentrated bet on your own employability, stamina, and luck all holding together at the same time. That's a risky portfolio, whether people call it that or not. And here is the harshest truth in the whole conversation. For many people, "I'll retire later" is not actually a plan to improve retirement. It is a refusal to admit that the original plan failed. That is why the phrase feels so respectable.
It protects pride.
It sounds like grit.
It sounds adult.
It sounds much better than saying, "The life I built costs too much," or "I never saved enough," or "I cannot stop because I confused income with security for 30 years. So they say they're choosing to work longer.
Maybe they are.
But maybe they are trapped longer. That distinction matters. Because a person who chooses to work longer from genuine freedom is in one category.
Fine.
They enjoy the work.
The income is bonus.
The pressure is low.
Great.
A person who works longer because they cannot safely exit, because they delayed structural changes, because the job props up a life that retirement cannot support, because they're terrified to confront identity without work, because they still need every paycheck, that is something else entirely. And pretending those two situations are the same does real damage. It turns necessity into virtue. It turns delay into strategy. It turns fear into prudence. And it keeps people from asking the only question that actually matters. If I keep working, what exactly is getting better, and what is quietly getting worse? Is the portfolio improving meaningfully? Are expenses coming down? Is the life becoming more sustainable?
Is health holding?
Is the job still worth the cost? Is this extension increasing freedom or just maintaining appearances?
That is the honest audit.
And for some people, the answer will be yes. Working longer really does help. It meaningfully improves the numbers.
It preserves options.
It buys security at an acceptable cost. But for a lot of others, the answer is much uglier. The extra years are preserving a house they should have left. Preserving a spending pattern they should have cut. Preserving an identity they are afraid to release. Preserving a professional role that is consuming the very vitality retirement was supposed to protect.
That's not wise. That's expensive. Not just in dollars. In life.
Because every year of delayed retirement has an opportunity cost beyond finance. There are only so many years when your body works well enough to enjoy long travel, long walks, ambitious plans, spontaneous weekends, meaningful hobbies, deep time with grandchildren, or even simple boredom without pain. People talk about working longer as if later will still be waiting in the same shape.
It won't.
Later ages too. That doesn't mean everyone should quit tomorrow. It means the blanket advice is false.
The slogan is false. The easy logic is false.
Working longer can help retirement. But it can also hurt it by keeping your costs too high, your identity too job-bound, your health under stress, your tax situation less efficient, your lifestyle unexamined, and your final healthy years partially spent in service of a plan that should have been redesigned much earlier. So the real question is not, should I work longer? That question is too shallow. The real question is, am I extending work to create freedom, or because I built a life that cannot survive without my continued labor? That answer changes everything. Because if work is buying you true margin, fine. If work is funding transition, fine. If work is helping you simplify, reposition, and enter retirement stronger, fine. But if work is simply postponing the reckoning, then no, you are not protecting retirement. You are spending it in advance. And that is the part nobody wants to hear. Sometimes the most dangerous retirement plan is not retiring too early. It's waiting so long to leave that the job gets the healthiest part of the freedom you spent your whole life trying to buy.